Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Cool Sports Network. I am your host, Chase Coburn, and today I am joined by a very special guest, a play by play announcer, writer, and reporter for the Big East on Fox Sports, John Fanta. John, thanks so much for coming on. Welcome to the show.
Chase, it's awesome to join you. It's fun to have college basketball back in our lives, my friend, and to think that we've got a team that's going for a three-peat, something that only John Wood and UCLA have done, your UConn Huskies. I'm pumped up for the 2024-25 campaign, my friend. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you are able to make it on. I cannot believe college basketball is here. I feel like we just saw March Madness and the crazy tournament and the crazy national championship game between Zach Edey and Donovan Clingan, two dominant centers in college basketball. But now those guys are in the NBA. College basketball is around the corner. It's crazy all of this is here. Like college basketball never overlaps. But yesterday, at the time of this recording, Monday, October 28th, the sports equinox, the only day where there's a game, a professional game for all four major sports. So I think we can all agree that we love that, and obviously all these great sports are coming back. College football has been back for a while. Let's talk about you for a second, though. When did you realize you wanted to get into this profession, and what has been your career path since to get to this point?
Well, the career path has been. I mean, it starts on the west side of Cleveland. So I grew up in Cleveland, and when you grow up in Cleveland, you eat, breathe, sleep, die. Browns, Indians, now Guardians, and Cavs. And I'd be remiss to not say rest in peace to Jim Donovan, the voice of the Cleveland Browns, who passed away from leukemia over the weekend.
Yeah.
Jimmy was a huge source of inspiration to me. He didn't know it. We didn't know each other well, but his energy was infectious. He called the game with such passion. Chase, you're a well-studied fan, so you know that the Guardians, their voice is Tom Hamilton, and he has unbelievable calls of home runs and moments in Cleveland. I grew up with that passion. I would turn the game down. I'm sure like maybe you have and other kids who want to broadcast. You listen to some of the game on your TV set, you turn the game down, you start to call it. Or you're in the shower and you start to rehearse. I was that kid. I knew I wanted to do this when I was about 6, 7 years old. I got to high school at St. Ignatius High School. I got done with my freshman year of football. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going. I was coming home from school every day, and my dad said to me about 3 or 4 days after school, after football season, he said, "So what's next?" I said, "What's next? I'm playing PlayStation and doing homework." He goes, "No, you aren't." He goes, "You're going to go find a way to use your passion for sports." Do they have any broadcasting on campus at your high school, at St. Ignatius High School, where my dad went, his brothers went, his father went? And I ended up meeting with the athletic director the next day. Yes, they had a broadcasting network. I met with the moderator of the broadcast network the next day. He said, "Can you be a cameraman on junior varsity basketball games this season?" 2 weeks went by. The play-by-play guy was going to run for student senate. He said, "My heart's not in this anymore." So I'm on the camera. The moderator looks at me and says, "Can you hop on and get on the air?" That was my first time really on the air.
Wow.
Freshman year of high school doing JV basketball. Here's the parallels, Chase. I get to Seton Hall University. I wanted to go to the metropolitan area. I'm a freshman at Seton Hall. There's a soccer game 2 weeks into my college time. I never called soccer in my entire life, but I got with the Pirate Sports Network at Seton Hall, which streams all the athletic events. I'm a cameraman. Sound similar?
Right.
10 minutes before the game, hey, the play-by-play announcer got a flat tire. Hey, we can't tap into the student radio feed. John, we've listened to 1 minute of your football tape. Can you call this soccer game in 5 minutes? I said yes. Got done with the game, a 110-minute scoreless draw. They said, "When can you be back?" You find the profession. You find your why, your how, your what, if you've got passion and you make yourself available. You might start your career not doing what you actually want to do in your career, but that's okay. It's all part of the journey. And the reward has been unbelievable. The first national championship game I ever covered, Chris Jenkins hit the shot for Villanova. The last 2 years,
Wow.
I'm in the back with Dan Hurley. I want to pinch myself. I get to do this for a living, and it's a dream come true.
They always say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. But sometimes that does take work, as you mentioned, to get to where you love. I think kind of that lesson there, don't say no. Take that opportunity, take that next step because you never know where it's going to lead you or what other opportunities can come from. And I think that sounds very cliche and simple, but I've heard it from a lot of people, but it obviously is such a great story. It helped you get started. You mentioned obviously working at Seton Hall ever since basically graduating from Seton Hall. And during your tenure there, you've been working with Fox and the Big East covering college basketball and mainly the Big East Conference. So you've been able to witness all these different things. You mentioned Jenkins' shot for Villanova, these last two national championships for UConn. The Big East is such a successful program or conference, with many great programs, both on the men's and women's side. And of course, the men's tournament played at Madison Square Garden. So we know how great the Big East is. But from a reporter's view, what makes it this incredible, dominant, passionate conference that is considered one of the best, if not the best, in college hoops?
Well, it's the fans. It's the fans and the coaches who are stars. The Big East has always been about big-time personalities. These larger-than-life, Big John Thompson, Lou Carnesecca, Jim Boeheim, Rolly Massimino. You go right down the line through the years.
Dan Hurley, Rick Pitino now, yeah.
Well, that's just it. In the present day, Hurley, Pitino, Sean Miller's intense, Ed Cooley's still around. You have some of the winningest coaches. Thad Matta has won 72% of the games he's coached in. A rising star in Shaheen Holloway. Greg McDermott's one of the best offensive minds in college basketball. But the rivalries are real. There's a hatred when you go up against each other. When you play out of conference, there's a love for that Big East team to get the win, Chase. There's a pride factor. And it all leads where? The world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. And when you could call that building your home, that's what makes the Big East special. You've got National Players of the Year through the years, Jalen Brunson, Doug McDermott, Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullen, Pearl Washington. You got larger-than-life coaches, but you've got a Northeast flair. And Northeast people are what? In your face. They want to beat you. Yeah. They want to win. They're not afraid. They're unabashed to win. That's the Big East. It's a mostly Catholic basketball league that prides itself on winning basketball games and having pasta and meatballs on a Sunday and trying to beat the heck out of one another. And there's bragging rights. Jim Calhoun always said there's something to be said about being the best in your neighborhood, the best on your block. And that's the Big East to me. There's a pride factor and a pageantry factor that's unrivaled.
I find it unbelievable that only, Creighton, Marquette, and UConn? I think it was only those three, maybe one more, that made the tournament last year. Did you feel that was disrespectful considering a lot of these teams like St. John's and Seton Hall hung around with the eventual champion Huskies and just the conference overall that, as you mentioned, is just so talented and aggressive and usually posts, 5 or more college teams in March Madness?
I thought that it was a snub. I thought that Seton Hall was deserving of the tournament. They beat UConn. They beat Marquette. They went 13-7 in the Big East. Chase, the Big East has been around for 45 years, since 1979. Never in the history of the league has a team that went at least 5 games over 500 in conference play been denied an NCAA tournament slot until Seton Hall. That, to me, was wrong. UConn's 43-3 in their last 46 games. And the Pirates own one of those wins. And by the way, Seton Hall's beaten UConn the last couple of years at the Prudential Center. They've had success. So I thought Shaheen Holloway had a case. The fact is, though, they didn't do enough in non-conference. Neither did St. John's, who got blown out by Michigan. Providence didn't do enough. And they had a tough injury. They make it if Bryce Hopkins stays healthy, Chase, because they would have had Hopkins and Devin Carter was Big East Player of the Year. Josh Oduro was playing well. They had a lot of good pieces to their puzzle last year. But you're right. You're right. I think that it was a year for the league that you reflect on. You say, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Because you don't want 3. You want to have 5 or 6. So I did think they were snubbed 1. but I think it offered a lesson on how the middle of the league gets better. The way the middle of the league is better is you got to win non-conference games. But Chase, the big thing is this. Villanova's gone downhill under Kyle Neptune. They got to get off the mat. And Georgetown has to start to accelerate. Ed Cooley was hired to win. He can't go 2-18 in the Big East. La Jolla's got to be better.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare, I guess, DePaul as well. They've never really been like that juggernaut program in the Big East, but it's very rare in a conference like the Big East where you have these automatic wins, especially when you're facing a program like Georgetown, and that's what it's been under Cooley and especially under Patrick Ewing. So I'm very curious to see if Cooley can turn that program around. For people who are wondering specifically what you do, I know you obviously announce Big East games. You announce men's basketball for non-conference. You also do a lot of women's during their conference play. We've been talking about the men a lot. Let's focus in on that. 43-3, as you mentioned, in the last 46. It has been all UConn Huskies. UConn Huskies. I live in Connecticut, so I'm a Huskies guy, and it's just been incredibly dominant. You've just wrote an article actually talking about Dan Hurley's sick and obsessive hunger to win a third title. He declined a job at the Los Angeles Lakers to stay in stores and chase his three-peat, something that has not been done, as you mentioned, since John Wooden. What is it about Hurley that makes him such a great coach, such a great leader, and such a great winner?
He's from Jersey City, and he has the heart of a lion. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He wakes up every day looking to beat the heck out of his opponent. Dan is wired to win. He finds even the smallest slight, and he wants to beat it. That's Dan Hurley. I think it's being the son of a Hall of Famer. You know, his father, Bob Sr., has such a knack, Chase, for winning and winning championships and being successful and being on the mountaintop. That to me, you know, that's what Danny comes from. Dan comes from, you know, he also lived in the shadow of his dad and his brother, who won back-to-back national championships as a player at Duke.
It's very funny. Now Bobby Hurley is Dan Hurley's brother when it was previously the
Well
other way
said,
around.
Chase. I think there's a motivational factor there of I've got to leave my print on things. I've got to leave my legacy on things. And I think that's what Dan is doing right now. And he has an opportunity. He's already going to the Naismith Hall of Fame. He has cemented himself the last 2 years as a basketball Hall of Famer when you win back-to-back national championships. But he has an opportunity to do something only John Wooden has done. And remember, Chase, we're not in a world where it's like, I'm a college freshman, then I'm a sophomore, then I'm a junior, I'm a senior, I stay in the same school. He's coaching in an era where there's constant roster turnover. The transfer portal has 2,000 kids in it. It's chaos.
We've seen coaches essentially quit on it. Tony
Bennett just quit. And I feel bad for the kids because it's 2 weeks before the season. Tony Bennett had a great career, and he's an awesome guy. But I can both say that and that I don't like the decision to quit on your kids 2 weeks before the season. You know, just say it. We're having an honest conversation here. I didn't like that move by Coach Bennett.
A little bit of I saw you were just talking about earlier, or not earlier on the show, but kind of recently on social media. Now Virginia guys are like transferring out. I mean, it's like a mess for that program this year after that decision.
It's a big mess because those kids are playing for Tony. They're playing for Tony. They came to Virginia to play for Coach Bennett. So you have one transfer today. There could be more. That's tough. But Dan has mastered it. He's mastered culture. He's mastered what it takes to win. He's done an amazing job of forming a circle of people that he trusts. He talked with Jay Wright at length. He's consulted with Seth Greenberg of the ESPN. And he knows who he is. He unapologetically is who he is, Chase. And his players are bought in because he tells them, I want to make you an NBA player. And when you now have Andre Jackson and Tristan Newton and Jordan Hawkins and Donovan Clingan and Stephon Castle and Cam Spencer, and you can say, Adama Sanogo, and you can say, here's what's possible. You can win it all and hear your name drafted. He's got the perfect formula because he grew up in Jersey City and he learned how to work. Dan Hurley, is as hard a worker as any.
I've actually met Dan now multiple times. I spoke to him. I had a decently long conversation with him just about a month ago at the UConn football game, and he's just, it's incredible. Like, it's funny when you see Dan, he seems like this very passionate and like, again, this like hungry guy wanting to win, and just it's all about that winning, that tough Jersey City guy. You see that on the court, you see that during the games, but it's also funny. He has a side that's a little different off the court as well, which is what I love. And I think finding that balance is obviously key. You can't act like that 24/7, but when he acts like that on the court, it works for his players. Let's go back though. You're talking about Tony Bennett and the NCAA, and it's a key thing. And I recently talked to Amanda Kristovich. She's a writer for Front Office Sports about college basketball. We spoke about this whole NIL situation, and it's honestly going to come down to like federal government, depending on if they should really be paid salaries. But still, by the NIL, you're getting paid by colleges. You have the transfer portal, so much movement. It's just such a different era of college basketball, and one that I know you did not grow up watching. So do you like this move for the game? Like, is this good for college basketball as a whole, or do there need to be tweaks to make sure it's modified?
The move you're speaking of, what exactly again?
The move mainly being like now that we're in this era where players can leave every single season and getting paid by the schools. And
I don't love the constant roster movement year in and year out. And here's why. I think it hurts the kid and their ability, to connect with their school, Chase, 20, 25 years from now. Because if a kid has 4 schools in 4 years, what school are they attached to? The last one that they're at? What if they didn't really enjoy their experience? Oh, let me connect with this other school. Well, you left us after a year. You see what I mean?
I know a guy at a local school at Fairfield University. I still keep in touch with him. He's now gone. He's his 4th team in 4 years. It's tough.
That's tough. I think that NIL is great. The athletes should be compensated. If you can make bank, who are we to say otherwise? Go for it. I would set up some contracts where you're at a place for a year or two, or 2 or 3 years. And I think it benefits you. It benefits the school because they have some roster security. And hopefully there's some financial incentives that allow you to stay and grow, and the school can pay you X if you've done this. I think constantly being in the portal, I don't think it helps anybody. I think it only creates more chaos. So I would love to see contracts get done of some nature. I don't love the constant roster changes because, Chase, to me, the best part about college basketball is the faces who you identify with. Now, Dan Hurley's a coaching face, right? Tom Izzo's a coaching face. Mick Cronin, John Shire, John Calipari. He entered the transfer portal. He went to Arkansas. But on the player side, I love that Alex Caravan's back in Connecticut. I identify with AK. How about Zach Edey was the epitome of this. Hunter Dickinson, Mark Sears, R.J. Davis.
Drew Timme.
Who's that?
Drew Timme.
I think that breed is going away the longer time goes on, and I hope it never does. Because I think that that's really important, for us for both the kid and the school. And I understand the finances and want the kids to financially benefit, but you don't want a kid to have no alumni connection, because I think that's the power of college sports. That never leaves.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting what you brought up, because not a lot of people have found a solution to where you could kind of fix the whole NIL chaos, but also fix the transfer portal chaos. And I think doing a contract could possibly work. And I'm very curious to see how the NCAA handles this, whether you can give up contracts, right? Are they students or are they players? Because theoretically, students shouldn't be told what they have to eat all the time as well, and how they should condition and all these different types of things. And that's what I talked about recently with Amanda. So it's kind of this line that the NCAA is going to have to figure out, the government's going to have to figure out. But I think that this is the game we're living in. And until changes are made, coaches are going to have to deal with it. Coaches have gone away, as we mentioned. Tony Bennett, a perfect example of this, just weeks before the season. But the guy who hasn't gone away is Dan Hurley. He's
Yeah.
handled it really well. He's reloaded a roster. 4 starters going to the NBA, yet UConn's still one of those top teams. I think you had them number 2 on your power rankings. Now, look, obviously the storyline is, UConn's chasing the three-peat. What is the actual realistic chance that the Huskies get to that level?
Oh, it's real. It's real. It's possible if 2 things happen. Number 1, the center position is still in a good place. It's been in an unbelievable place the last 2 years. UConn has overwhelmingly been the best offensive rebounding team in the country. They've been at the top of the charts on the glass. So this season, you're going to be relying upon Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed. Chase, that's a big difference from Adama Sanogo, Donovan Clingan, than Donovan Clingan, Samson Johnson. Can Terrace Reed handle the transition to UConn? Is Samson Johnson ready to be the lead man? We will have to wait and see. The other thing is, Tristan Newton was an All-American last season. He was brilliant. He was extraordinary. You just don't have one kid replace him. I do believe in Hassan Diarra. I think he's tough as nails. I think he understands how to run the offense. I don't think he's as good of a scorer as Newton was, but he really can play.
And he's smart. He's a smart player, high IQ. Yeah.
And Aiden Mahaney was a great ad. And Mahaney, I think, will come into his own. Remember, UConn fans, remember how long it took for Newton to figure it out? If you looked at his 2022-23 season, and you got to January of that season, Chase, and I asked you about Tristan Newton, you would have said, yeah, he hasn't really panned out. And then look what happened. He took off. Give Mahaney a little bit of time. I think Liam McNeely will be one of the best freshmen in college basketball. I think Caravan will be big time. I'm very curious to see Solomon Ball and his sophomore leap. I think it's going to be real. I think he's going to be a stud. But you got to have point guard play and you got to have center play. I'm more concerned about the center position, but I think this team's got a lot of pieces and parts. They've got depth. How realistic is it for them to get back to the Final Four? I say, why not, Chase? Because Dan Hurley's mastered a great system, and they got enough returning pieces back.
Yeah, they do, and I think Dan Hurley, one of the greatest parts about him is not only is he a great coach. LeBron James will tell you that. That's why I recruited him to come to the Lakers, and the franchise did as a whole. But he's also such a good recruiter. And you mentioned it earlier. The case is very easy now. Do you want to go and win national championship and get your name called in the draft? I mean, that's kind of an easy recruiting process. And while the talent may not be the Donovan Clingans and Stephon Castles, he still does have a team. And I think he mentioned this is the deepest team he thinks he's had in a while. Someone I don't think you even mentioned there was Jalen Stewart. I think he could take a big lead this year. So we'll see what happens for the Huskies. But they're not the only teams that are going to be great in the Big East over on the men's side. The Huskies are joined 3 other top 25 teams, Marquette, Xavier, and Creighton on your list. What is one team, maybe not one of those that you're high on, that can make some noise in this conference?
Well, I think St. John's can make a lot of noise. I really do. Kadari Richmond, Davon Smith are going to be 2 of the most dynamic guards in college basketball. You brought in Aaron Scott from North Texas. Zuby Ejiofor, Chase, looks the part of a guy who's going to have a big year for this team. So I'm really intrigued by St. John's. I think that they're going to have a nice blend of guard play. They're going to be tough. They're going to be able to generate pace. If Sim Wilcher can make a sophomore leap, Simeon Wilcher, Rick Pitino's been known in year 2 to have great runs. At Providence, he went to the Final Four his second year. The second year he was eligible for the tournament at Kentucky, he made a very deep run. Louisville, he turned around, won over 20 games. He's been to multiple Final Fours his second season on these jobs over the years. So I think St. John's is dangerous. You brought up UConn, you brought up Creighton, you brought up Xavier, correct?
Yeah.
I think that they're all dangerous. You can't count out Marquette because Cam Jones should be one of the best players in the Big East, and Shaka Smart has roster continuity. I think everybody's burying Seton Hall again, but Shaheen Holloway, Chase, looks like one of the best young coaches in the game. Yeah. And they got an Ohio State transfer in Scotty Middleton, a Boston College transfer in Prince Aligbe, who's going to be a leader. And I really like Garway Dual coming over from Providence. So, and I think Providence has a chance too. One big if, though, Chase. If Bryce Hopkins is back to form, he's got to be the leader of the Friars.
They're all going to be chasing, obviously, the Huskies again, chasing that three-peat right across, I should say right across the street, right in that same facility is the women's team. Now, they haven't won a championship since 2016, but they have dominated the Big East. Over on the women's side, they've won the Big East tournament final games by close to an average of 30 points. Who's UConn's biggest test in the Big East this year over on the women's side?
It's going to be Creighton. It'll be the Creighton Blue Jays program. They're ranked 21st in the preseason. And Jim Flannery has another group that's very, very experienced between Lauren Jensen, their lead guard, who started at Iowa and now has come to Creighton and had just a tremendous career there. Morgan Malley's had a really nice career as a senior left-hander, lefty sharpshooter who's versatile at 6'1". Molly Mogensen's a veteran guard who makes them go as well. Kiani Lockett, a 5'8" guard. Kennedy Townsend, a 5'10" guard who's a junior. Ton of upperclassmen. In fact, as I look at it, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 of their 11 players are upperclassmen. 9 of their 11. So, Chase, that makes a difference. That makes you old. It makes you versatile. They got a lot of different options. They can play through Jensen and Morgan Malley. Yes, they lost Emma Ronsick, and that's a sizable loss. But Jim Flannery's been incredible in recent years out in Omaha. If you look at schools around the country and you find combined programs, UConn men and women would be number one. But Creighton men and women have gotten way up there with how collectively successful the two are.
Yeah. I feel like, they call UConn the basketball capital of the world, but I think a lot of people forget there are a lot of teams that could make some noise at them. The women's program, they won 11 national championships. They haven't won, though, in 8 years. Now, have they still been dominant? Have they still made Final Fours? Yes, but it's no longer this overpowering program, and I think that's great for women's basketball. I spoke about this again with Amanda, as I mentioned. I spoke with her about a few different things, but one of the things we talked about was, no more Caitlin Clark, no more Angel Reese. Those were kind of the stars who rose to popularity of women's basketball, almost to the point of men's basketball, at least from a ratings point of view last year. Do you think
more?
Yeah, more. Yeah. Without those stars, now obviously them in the WNBA, do you think women's basketball will sustain this kind of success, at least compared to women's basketball in the ratings side?
I think so. I think that the Caitlin Clark movement produced ratings that were just unbelievable. I still think ratings are going to be really good. I think that UConn draws. I think that UFC with Juju Watkins. Juju Watkins set an NCAA record for most points in a single season by a freshman. And set a record for scoring average as well by a freshman. So we haven't even seen the best from her. I mean, she had a 51-point game as a freshman. We're going to only see the talents increase. There's going to be, I don't know if there'll be somebody truly like Caitlin Clark, Chase, but there's going to be people that get towards her level and produce ratings and produce a lot of interest. So for me, I don't think we're done at all. I think we're only going to see Paige Beckers is the face of the sport this year. Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame, really talented, electrifying player who makes them go. I love the time that we're in right now in women's basketball. And I think we only got brighter days ahead between Juju and Paige, who are going to meet on December 21st.
Great
Hidalgo, who I think is really talented. Madison Booker of Texas. Kiki Iriafen of USC as well. There's a lot of talent. And I think across America, we're only going to see that talent continue to blossom.
It's going to be a fun year, both for men's and women's college basketball. John, you're obviously an expert on this. We're looking forward to watching and listening to you and all your content, reading all your articles with Fox Sports. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this, including to myself, who would love to be in your shoes as an announcer, a reporter, a journalist, covering such a great conference, such a great sport. What would be your key piece of advice to an aspiring sports broadcaster like myself?
Well, Chase, you don't need my advice because you're already a star.
Thank you.
But I will say this. You can control two things in life. Number one, how hard you work. You can outwork people. You can put your foot on the gas and outwork people. Number two, how you are towards people. People want to hire people who are kind, who are giving up their time, who spend time with the producers, the directors, the people who lay the electrical cords down. and who help one another. You know, if you do this with humility and hard work, you're going to get the results that you want. No one day is the same. There will be challenges. There will be different things throughout your journey that you say, you know, why did that happen or how did that happen? But I'll tell you what, Chase, I love doing this. And I love doing this because I get to meet people like yourself. And you're doing a great job with Cool Sports Network. It's cool. I can't wait to see what's next as time goes on. But my advice is say yes, even if you don't think that whatever the opportunity is exactly what you want to do. You might find out it is what you want to do. And even if it doesn't go well, then you find out you in fact don't want to do it for a living. You never know where a yes can lead you to. You never know.
The first piece of advice I ever got was from Justin Kutcher. He does some stuff with Fox Sports Golf Channel, was the voice of the Washington Wizards. My first ever interview. He told me never turn down an opportunity, and I haven't since. I'm going to continue to listen to that, listen to people like you, John, and all the great people I've had on the show, including yourself, John Fanta. Thank you so much for coming on, and we're looking forward to viewing all your content. Thank you so much.
Chase Coburn, you're awesome. Cool Sports Network is the place to be. I can't wait for college hoops. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. You're not alone. We all can't wait for college hoops. Everyone, thank you so much for watching alongside John Fanta of Fox Sports. I'm your host, Chase Coburn. And we will see you next time right here from the Cool Sports Network. Take care.